Hello again and welcome to this week's video briefing. I'm Graham Hutchings and I'm delighted to say I'm here today with my colleague Eduardo Plastino, Senior Analyst at Oxford Analytica, and we're talking today about the outlook for Venezuela. The death of President Hugo Chavez, announced in Caracas on Tuesday, has raised big question marks about the future of that country. Chavez's career was as long as it was remarkable. He came to power in 1999, he survived a coup in 2002, and he went on to make a very big mark in his own country, and by virtue very largely of the oil riches that Venezuela has, on countries beyond Venezuela's borders. So the big question for us, and this is what we're going to start with, Eduardo, is the extent to which Chavismo, the Chavez revolution as it were, can really endure very long beyond the death of its founder.
Well, in the short run, I think the answer is yes. Chavismo without Chavez is not only possible but likely. What we'll see in the coming days is that there will be new elections, which will very probably be won by Nicolás Maduro, acting president, and Chavez handpicked successor. Yeah. So there is a lot of grief in the country at the moment. Chavez already had a very large lead over the opposition in last year's presidential election.
Even though he was quite ill at
Even
the
though
time,
he was very ill, exactly.
Couldn't campaign effectively.
Exactly. So you add to that all the sympathy that his party will have as a result of his departure, and I think the answer is that we will have Chavismo without Chavez in the short term at least.
Yes, and the feeling that people have of grief towards his departure and the sadness they have is genuine, isn't it? It isn't manufactured as it might be in some dictatorships where there's organised weeping and lamenting.
Well, no, Chavez was a very popular leader in the country, and especially for the poor sectors of society. So you have to remember that for all its many economics mistakes and difficulties, poverty in Venezuela halved during Chavez's period in office.
Yeah. There is, however, if we look at the slightly longer term, a number of major questions surrounding the health of the economy, aren't there? There's the question of the currency, there's the question of inflation, and there are big questions, I suppose, about whether the oil wealth is being put to the right cause and the appropriate efficiencies and effectiveness at work there.
It's true. The economy in general is very inefficient in Venezuela. Oil revenue has been used for social programs and also to help allies abroad. Domestically, I think it's very unlikely that social programs will diminish as a result of Chavez's death, because they are the very basis of Chavismo.
Exactly.
So I don't think we'll see any change there in the short run. Or even in the medium term. But there are many things that have to be done elsewhere in the economy. You have to invest more in the oil sector if you are to remain competitive. You have to address inflation, which is extremely high. The fiscal position of the government has been deteriorating for a while now. Last month, in February, the government devalued the currency, the bolivar, by 32%, which was not enough.
No, quite. Do you think, as a result of the removal of Chavez from the scene, the country is going to be any more attractive to investors? Are the doors going to open in any significant way in the aftermath of his departure to investors in a way that what wasn't the case while he was around?
In the short term, I think the answer is no. But in the longer term, it's possible that we will see a gradual change in policy to address precisely the inefficiencies and problems that we have just discussed. So that could in time generate a better business environment, although it won't happen overnight. And of course, investors have grown wary of Venezuela. I think in the short term, we could still see some nationalizations and so on, and there will be pressure on the government from the more radical wings of the Chavismo movement.
Yes. One thing we haven't mentioned yet, I think perhaps we ought to, even though it might not require much time, is the position of the army. Because I think I'm right in saying that the announcement of the president's death was followed quite quickly by a pretty unambiguous statement from the military about its determination to preserve the cause, as it were.
That is true. I think any attempt to take over power by the army can be absolutely ruled out at the moment.
One of the extraordinary things about Chavez was the international profile he had, both in the region and beyond as a kind of anti-US figure. In the region, that anti-US sentiment was expressed through the ALBA organization, broadly speaking an alternative to the US-led pro-market liberal vision of economic integration and exchange. How is ALBA going to be tested now that Chavez has gone? Is it going to endure, or will it, do you think, disappear? Does it have any meaning post-Chavez?
Well, I think ALBA as a framework will officially continue to exist. Its content, I'm not so sure. I mean, it won't be a significant force in the region, I believe, if you look ahead in the longer term. In terms of Venezuela's international relations in the region, some countries will be affected by possible changes. One area to look at is cheap oil that Venezuela provides to some neighboring countries, especially Cuba.
Yes, which is going through its own sort of gradual political change of leadership as well.
Yes, exactly.
To which Chavez was especially tied, wasn't he?
He was.
Personally and politically.
Both personally and politically. You have to remember that he undertook most of his treatment in Cuba.
Yes.
So, and he was very close to the Castro brothers. And if you look in the longer run, as a result of the economic difficulties of Venezuela, you could probably see some pressure on the new government to diminish the provision of cheap oil to neighboring countries. In that sense, Chavez would be able to resist any such pressures because of his charisma, but the same cannot be said of his successor, probably Maduro. So there could well be a change there, in the medium term.
Let's look finally, Eduardo, at the relationship between Caracas and Washington, because in a sense, particularly under President Bush, less so under Obama, they both needed each other as enemies, and they beat each other metaphorically on the diplomatic stage. Is there an opening now when we get beyond the period of mourning, when Maduro, if it's him who succeeds, if he gets settled, is there some room, do you think, for an opening up of relations in a significant way?
There could be a gradual opening. I don't expect anything to change overnight, definitely not before the elections.
No, naturally.
But you have to remember that since Obama took office, the United States has, by and large, remained quiet about Venezuela, which seems to be working for its own purposes. So it was more a matter of Chavez using the U.S. as a target than the other way around. I believe in the coming years, if not months, you could see some gradual change in Caracas' position towards the United States.
Thank you very much, Eduardo.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for watching this video. I do hope you've enjoyed the discussion. We'll be following the situation in Venezuela very closely in our analysis. If you'd like to find out how our analysis and advisory work can help you secure your objectives, whether it be in the Latin American region or elsewhere, we'd be delighted to hear from you. So do contact us via our website. In the meantime, goodbye.